Silver Explorer spends the summer months, or the European Northern Hemisphere summer, in the European Arctic, which is Svalbard, Greenland, Canadian Arctic, and every so often we also head over into the Russian Arctic, the White Sea, Nova Zemlya and Franz Josef Land. We spend a considerable amount of our summer operating around Svalbard, and it is an incredible destination. The main reason for us going to Svalbard, of course, is looking for polar bears. Unfortunately, polar bears are not yet on the endangered species list, but sadly there's only about 2,500 polar bears left in the wild in Svalbard. About 20,000 polar bears left worldwide. It really isn't a zoo. It's a huge area in the archipelago, and we spend all our time looking for the bears. And that's why it's so good to have a ship like Silver Explorer with the ice class, because the ice class allows us to go into the ice and look for the polar bears. That's where you find them. And if you don't find ice, you're not going to find the polar bears, because the animals that they feed on, the seals, do live on the ice. So it is really important. You can see how this is all connected. No ice, no bears. It's really a vicious circle. It would be wrong to create an expectation of hundreds of polar bears on an expedition. But we do go out and look for them, and our expedition leaders do have all the skills, and our ship is equipped to go into the ice, and our captains understand what it takes to approach these animals when we do encounter them. Nothing can explain the feeling that you have when you see your first, second, third or fifth polar bear for the expedition. Our guests will come out onto the deck. We open the bow of the ship, the forecastle, and we will slowly and steadily get closer and closer. We will never pursue the bear. That's not what you want to do. But bears are curious, and they will quite often come closer to the ship, and we will stop the ship and gently drift into the ice, and the bears will just come slowly up to the ship, closer and closer, and it's an incredible feeling. You know, I remember once we were about 14 miles of the nearest island, quite far north, over 82 degrees north, and it was early in the morning, at 5 o'clock in the morning, and in Svalbard you have 24-hour daylight when we operate there, and we're looking for ice to find hopefully seals, and then hopefully find polar bears. But the further we got away from land, the deeper it got, and the deeper it gets, the less chance of finding seals, because they need the nutrients. So anyway, it was about 5 o'clock in the morning, and we had to make the decision whether we continue north or whether we turn around and head back to shore. Now, if we turned around and go back to the islands, it would take us about 3.5 hours of cruising. That's not something that we like to do with expedition ships. We like to be off the ship rather than on the ship. So anyway, we made the decision, and it was just before we turned the ship around. One of our bear guards, because when we were in the Arctic, we employ additional staff as bear spotters and bear guards, and one of the bear guards called out a polar bear. So we spotted this bear, and we immediately realized it was a mother with some cubs. So we stopped the ship, and we announced it to the guests, and they all came out. And it was quite funny, because it was very early in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, something coming out of their bathrobes. And that's the kind of thing, it's very informal on these expedition ships. But what happened next is something that I've never seen before. These two cubs got up from the ice floe where they were on and followed their mother and came all the way to the ship. And you can see this little polar bear. I mean, look at him, he's standing straight up, and he's just looking up at the ship on his two back legs. And it's incredible, because these bears just kept on walking around the ship for about 45 minutes, and we couldn't move the ship because these are marine mammals. So they can go in the water at any stage, they can swim. We don't know what they're going to do. I mean, these bears can swim easily up to 90, 100 miles in one go. So we had to wait for these bears to walk away from the ship so that we could comfortably move the ship away. And these are the kind of experiences that you cannot plan, but that we do have on the expedition ships, and especially in places like Antarctica, the Arctic, Russian Far East. But you know, when we go to the Arctic, it's not only about polar bears. We do come across walrus that are hauled out. You know, it's a perfect time of the year for them to feed. We do get them hauled out onto the ice and ashore. It's also a perfect time for the bird breeding season. You know, we get to see species like the Atlantic puffin. One of my favorite birds that we get to see is the tiny little Arctic tern. And this bird, a feisty little bird, will migrate. It's one of the longest migrators in the world. Will migrate every single year from the Arctic down to the Antarctic. 27,000 miles migration every single year that this bird will undertake. And it's incredible to see this animal in action. If you get closer to its nest, it will attack you, and it's only about this size. And it's a wonderful, wonderful example of survival in the Arctic. It really is a fantastic destination and so easy to get to. We have charter flights out of Oslo. So our guests fly to Oslo and we charter aircraft and we all fly up together to Longyearbyen. The voyages start in Longyearbyen and we spend 7 to 8 days around the archipelago before we head down via Bear Island to Tromsø, where the voyages end. And we also include on one of our expeditions, every single year we go over to the east coast of Greenland where we visit Scoresbysund. We spend 3 to 4 days exploring Scoresbysund, where you honestly will see the biggest icebergs that you can imagine. I have never seen bigger icebergs anywhere else in the world. Incredible scenery, and also one or two very remote villages that we get to visit in Greenland.